Good day to you all. My name is Sarah Moyo. I'm a lawyer and the chair of the Alternative Dispute Resolution and Legal Subcommittee of the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. 26 April is World Intellectual Property Day. The day was established by the World Intellectual Property Organization to raise awareness of the importance of intellectual property and to celebrate the great contribution which creators and innovators make to the general well-being of society and to the global economy. The theme for this year's celebration is Women and IP, Accelerating Innovation and Creativity, celebrating the can-do attitude of women inventors, creators, and entrepreneurs around the world. The Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce is a business membership organization, and one of its objects is to upscale enterprises led by women through the Women's Desk Subcommittee. To this end, the Alternative Dispute Resolution Subcommittee has, in conjunction with the Women's Desk Subcommittee, chosen to celebrate the 2023 World IP Day by hosting a panel to celebrate the successes of women-led enterprises in Zimbabwe, to raise awareness of the importance of IP for women-owned businesses, and to interrogate the challenges that women face in using and benefiting from the intellectual property system in Zimbabwe. To help me in this discussion, I have three very able women. Lucy Maroa, who is chair of the Women's Desk Subcommittee of the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. Roslyn Charewa, who is the founder and managing director of Sedax Investments Private Limited. And last but not least, Lilian Ngundu, who is principal examiner in the Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this important conversation. To start the conversation rolling, I will begin with you, Lucy. One aspect of the World IP Day is for us to celebrate the achievements of female entrepreneurs in Zimbabwe. As chair of the Women's Desk, which is well known for the Women in Enterprise Conference and Awards, which are held on an annual basis to empower business women and to celebrate their achievements, what would you say are the successes that business women have had in Zimbabwe over the last 10 years?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for hosting us this afternoon. I wish to say that over the past 10 years, I think we've really seen a growth in terms of women-owned businesses as well as women-led businesses in Zimbabwe. We have seen, I think, the growth rate of women-owned businesses has been about twice the number of male-owned businesses. And this reflects both in the registered and unregistered businesses. So I'm talking about formal and informal businesses. I think the entrepreneurial spirit when it comes to women is undoubted. And this is not surprising because women, being the caretakers of the homes, are taking up more space in business in trying to be breadwinners, and they are not doing this only on a small scale. They're doing this even in the formal space by making sure that they are going all out to take up space. We've seen the emergence of quite renowned names on the markets in terms of women-owned businesses, some of which have become household brands. We are talking about your Yanayas, we are talking about your Fresh in a Box, we are talking about your Mother Touch group of schools, your Code Camps. I mean, look, these are names that we all know, which we are now speaking about every day with ease, and these are owned by women. Look at even CAG buses. There's a woman behind it. And this is women coming all out. And I think there are many more that we could cite. So in terms of women-owned businesses, we've really seen a lot of women taking up space. I'll even talk about women-led businesses. We've also seen a lot of female leaders emerging, taking up spaces as CEOs, as board chairmen, and so forth. It may not be the level that we want. We may not have reached the quotas that we would really wish to see, but I've seen quite an improvement in terms of women-led enterprises that we have seen. There are many names that we could cite, and I think it's encouraging. Even politically, I think we've also seen improvement of women taking up space, political space. So let me say that, yes, the participation of women in decision-making has been remarkable.
Thank you, Lucy. And what impact has the business environment in Zimbabwe and the global coronavirus pandemic in particular has had on women-led enterprises?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic seriously had a dent on many traditional businesses, whether women-owned or male-owned. I think the traditional model of doing business was seriously affected, and this led to a lot of businesses facing collapse if the business model did not change. But women being innovative, women being inventors, a lot of them went out of their shells and actually changed tack in the way they did things. And in fact, it saw the birth of actually new business models coming. Digital marketing became the in thing. People went out of their way to say, we cannot sit at home and not earn money. So it birthed actually new businesses that are flourishing right now, that are owned by women, whilst the traditional business models actually fell by the wayside. There are many businesses that we can cite that were birthed by women during the COVID-19 pandemic, where people saw space that, you can't go to the shops maybe because you don't have a vehicle. So people stood in the gap, started doing the couriers for groceries. I think there was one that the ZNCC awarded last year. She was the best businesswoman. I think it was called Tumakeri. She saw a space and she said, okay, I'll be your runner. I'll bring the goods to you. There were others who would do even medicines. These were women, not even men, who saw up that space there. I even have examples of women who then said, okay, who will have the elderly that need to be looked after in their homes. They formed consortiums to do nursing of patients in the homes. These are businesses that were both birthed through the COVID-19 pandemic. So whilst the traditional business model was falling by the wayside, women were coming up with innovations and registering new businesses and actually flourishing, going out of their way to create something new. So whilst the others were falling, the women were rising. So also on the other side, I'm not saying that there are businesses that were not affected, but I'm saying women showed that they were resilient and they could think outside the box and they could actually birth new things. So I'm actually saying kudos to the women for actually standing the test of time and rising above it all.
Yes, kudos to them. And in fact, this is what the World IP celebration is all about. It says that women being more than half of the global population, they cannot be left out of the IP conversation. They are innovative, they are creative, and it is for the benefit of society when they are able to use their IP for the benefit of their businesses. So, in your opinion, Lucy, you've spoken about the creativity of women. In your opinion, how much knowledge do women entrepreneurs have about intellectual property when embarking on their businesses? And to what extent do they actively use it to benefit their enterprises?
Well, I think when you say intellectual property, that knowledge may not be as rampant as it should be. It may be a term that you will throw out there and somebody will say, what? What do you actually mean? I think it's something that you don't get taught And you may not actually meet on the street. You go into the business, you start, nobody teaches you these things unless a good Samaritan comes by and tells you these things. And I think this is a gap that as women, we actually need to fill. A lot of these businesses I'm talking about may not have even protected their intellectual property. And somebody will come in and snatch it and run away with it because they've not protected themselves. So I still think that there is a big gap there. And I think I may be speaking off the cuff, but I doubt that very much, that knowledge on intellectual property is actually out there. We start something, we run with it, we flourish, but we do not protect our intellectual property. We don't protect our innovations. And in fact, we have no knowledge that it's important to do so. We simply think because my brand is known out there, if somebody is to copy it, I will sue them. But do you sue them? You saw them on what basis? What protection do you have? I think that knowledge is actually not there, even in the business world. So amongst the women, I doubt that it's there. But this is really my opinion. I stand to be corrected. I believe that there is work to be done to make sure that anybody who creates something knows that I have to protect myself, and they need to be taught how to protect themselves and where they can go to make sure that they protect their idea.
Yes, very well spoken, Lucy. Yes, there's definitely a gap, as you say, in the sense that women need to know, firstly, to identify what the intellectual property asset is in their business, to know who owns the intellectual property which may have been created by their employees, and how they can register ownership of that intellectual property in their own name. So maybe, thank you, Lucy. So maybe this will lead me on to Rosaline. Rosaline Charewa, who is a businesswoman in her own right, a renowned businesswoman. Rosaline, you are the founder and managing director of SEDEX Investments Private Limited, which is a cleaning and landscaping service company. At the inception of your business 14 years ago, Lucy, did you know anything about intellectual property?
Hi there, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I did, actually. Because I have a brother who used to work for Standards Association of Zimbabwe. And he used to talk about these things, but as a brother, I never used to take him seriously. So I could say I had an idea of what it was. And I remember even back in the day, one of our employees took our documents and changed up our names, and used them to form her own company. And I remember I even took her to court. My argument was, she's abusing my intellect. She took she's abusing my intellectual rights. I remember the judge looking at me like, what do you know about intellectual rights? But yeah, I kind of knew what it was.
All right. Well, that was great that you were in that position where you had a family member who was able to advise you. And I think what you're saying about the fact that you actually had to take this employee to court also speaks to the fact that women-owned enterprises also need to have a budget, for at the expense of enforcing their intellectual property rights. So I think following on what Lucy was saying, the issue is obviously, first of all, having the passion to develop and protect your rights, to register them, and then also to be able to enforce them. And all that also needs resources. Because the national registration system does come with costs, legal expenses as well, either for the National Registration Office or for the legal services that one may hire from lawyers. So over the years, as your business has grown and expanded, Rosaline, what knowledge have you gained on the subject, and have you had any tangible benefits from the intellectual property system in Zimbabwe?
I can't say, just to answer your last question first, I can't say I've had any benefits to speak about. And just like Lucy said, I really was impressed by your take, Lucy. It was like you are in the business. I know you are in the business, but on another level, it seemed like you are an entrepreneur. We have not had any benefit to speak of. But through interactions with other business women, I got to know about an organization called WIPO. And some time ago, I reached out to them wanting to protect my brands. I had started manufacturing detergents. So what I did was to brand these detergents using different names, which meant that each brand was representative of itself. So when I reached out to them wanting to protect the brands, I was told that they had a fee that was very reasonable compared to the norm, but it was not affordable to me. And though I ended up registering about 3, but that was about it. And, detergents is such a huge line. And I ended up innovating, so to say, and came up with a generic brand, which I'm about to register now. So I can't really say I benefited, but the benefit came with innovating and trying to come up with ways to minimize the cost of registering the brands or protecting them or patenting them.
Yeah, yeah. I think what you say also, perhaps it gives me the idea that perhaps as the Women's Desk, Lucy, perhaps we should have on our website a list of the organizations to which women can receive assistance on intellectual property, because Lillian will speak to the costs in the Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office. But one of the advantages with the local Intellectual Property Office is that you can actually register your trademarks using the local currency. Unlike a WIPO, which as a regional intellectual property office will obviously have fees that are denominated in the United States dollar, which again can be a bit costly for our local businesswomen. And I think also it brings to the fore the question of whether perhaps we shouldn't have also different tariffs of fees for SMEs and women-led businesses. But obviously these are policy issues, which I'm not really educated enough to speak on.
Sarah, I think as the Women's Desk, even as we deal with the women-owned businesses, it's also an area of improvement in terms of teaching the women as well. During our Women in Enterprise Conference and Awards, the importance of protecting their intellectual property rights, as well as to teach them where they could go, how they could go about it, because that knowledge might actually not be there. And also even the importance, I think it's important that we also bring in the organizations such as WIPO to come and do these and explain to the women. And maybe once we get the explanations, then maybe the benefits will become apparent, and Rose may have a different story next year to say, I then saw the benefit once I registered and this is what I saw on the ground.
Yeah. Because in my view, a WIPO is very useful where a business wants to operate in the region. So, for example, where you do not want to limit your business to just the national, the domestic market, and want to spread your product to other countries in the region, such as Zambia, Mozambique, Kenya. I mean, with the African Free Continental Trade Area, obviously there's going to be more and more intra-continental trade. So that's where WIPO as a regional intellectual property office becomes very important. But I think for business women who are just starting out and are looking to market their product to the domestic market, then the Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office is a very good place to start.
Just to interject, sorry, Sarah. I should think WIPO is supposed to come up with, or ZNCC Women's Desk may actually advocate for women to get commissions to register, at least give us a special price. Give us a special price, give women some kind of commission, so that they can be forthcoming in registering their intellect and their intellectual.
Yeah.
Some sort of incentive.
Or go concessionary rates.
Concessionary,
okay.
Yes, because I know I mean, Lillian can come in here, because I know in other jurisdictions they do have a fee structure where for large organizations, for large corporates, they will have a certain fee. If it's an SME, maybe like if your enterprise is maybe like less than 100 employees or something, then you have a reduced fee. So I think it's definitely something that could be considered by organizations business organizations in Zimbabwe, and perhaps the national office could be asked to lobby for that. Because again, Lillian will speak to this, but from my experience as a lawyer and from the statistics that we get from WIPO, most of the filing for protection of intellectual property rights, even in the Zimbabwe office, even in WIPO, which is a regional organization, most of the filing is actually from external parties, sometimes not even locals. So again, we need to consider encouraging local business people to register by perhaps considering policies on having concessionary rates. Lillian, I don't know if you want to come in at this stage.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. On that one, on the fees schedule, it's more like locals are being encouraged to use the national office, because they say different to say if you are a foreign, you have to pay in US. But if you are a local person, you have to pay in Sim dollar. And of which Sim dollar, like we don't even use the actual rate. It's more like it's lower, very low, other than the US dollar. So you are being encouraged to use the national office as the first port of call. If you are planning to go out, maybe you're having your intellectual property strategy to say you have to protect nationally, then the next thing is to protect it regionally. Then we are now going regionally. It means we are now financially strong, so that you can take up the regional route, and then finally the international route. So you have to start with the national route, which is cheaper for the locals, for the SMEs, because to speak now it's 1,500 to file a trademark application.
Zimbabwe dollars.
Yes, Zimbabwe dollars. So it's very cheap. Okay. So you have to choose the national route. Then when you want to expand now you have to go to the regional route. Then when you want to go internationally, you have to use the Madrid route, the international route. where you can designate where you want to market your products. And again, I think on the certain NCC, you need to have a desk where you have to teach women on intellectual property, where to go. Maybe you can come up with pamphlets or flyers so that they can easily access the information.
I think the easiest is to partner with you. You are the gurus who will talk after this.
Yes, and in fact, I know that the Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office has always had a desire to have outreaches anyway to communities, business organizations. So, yes, so Lillian has put it out there that they are available to assist, give talks to our members. So, yeah, Lillian, I think Lucy will definitely be taking you up on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe I will continue with you then, Lillian. Lillian, you are a principal examiner in the Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office, and you probably have the best insight as to the extent to which the National Intellectual Property system is used in Zimbabwe. Our national laws provide for the registration of patents, industrial designs, and trademarks. What type of intellectual property right would you say has the most number of applicants or registrations based in Zimbabwe?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. On that one, the number of applications which are high on trademarks, because we have done a number of outreach. We go to the exhibitions. We even have SMEs workshop where we train SMEs on how to protect their intellectual property. But mostly you find out that they have trademarks other than patents and industrial designs. But of recently, I have seen a number of women coming from same trade saying that they were being trained on how to protect their intellectual property rights. But the problem is they were being trained without the intellectual property people, without our office. So it's more like they were just getting bits and pieces of the information on intellectual property because after the trainings, they will be directed to our office to come and to protect the IP. That's when you find out that they don't have information, they don't understand much on intellectual property. So you have now to start teaching them to say maybe this one is not a trademark, this one is not a patent, this one is not an industrial design. Maybe it's a copyrighted thing. So there's much to be done.
Yes, so in other words, what you're saying is that when information is given out to the consumers, they need to get information as to what intellectual activity would qualify for protection under the different national pieces of legislation, whether it's the Trademark Act, the Industrial Designs Act, the Patents Act, and also what the time limits are, and at what stage can they protect. Because I think, as you say, sometimes people will put their product out there and then want to register a patent for it. But because the product is already on the market, it will have lost its novelty. So, yes. Yeah. So I think, again, as you say, Lillian, it highlights the necessity for business membership organizations to work with your office so that people get the full picture as to what it is that they should be doing to protect their intellectual property fully. And also, I think the issues of where your employee has created or done the innovative work, do you still as the business owner, own that intellectual property? Should there be clauses in the contract of employment that would assign any creativity that is done by the employee during the course of their employment? So I agree with you that these are all important considerations which business women need to be aware of. So with regard to statistics now on the registration of intellectual property rights by women, when parties apply for the registration of their intellectual property, let's say, for example, trademarks, which you say are the most commonly protected in Zimbabwe, is there any information or statistics that you can give us as to how many women or women-owned businesses are registering for trademark protection?
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. On that one, it's very difficult to get statistics on which gender, women's or female, women's or men, because our database, the system we use does not have the category to say when a woman files, we have to capture it to say this is a female filed an application or this is a male filed an application. Even the companies to say they have the female directors or who make that or are part to that company. It's difficult. It's just the company internationality or the name of the person, but not saying is the person a female or a male. It's just an information which you can say maybe to search by nationality, to say in Zimbabwe we have a such number on trademarks or on patents, or you search by name. But by observation we can say there are a number of women which are using IP, especially we have SMEs, even students from universities, they are filing patents, trademarks, some have copyrighted work. We have a number of them. Some are also prominent. Yes.
Thank you, Lillian. I know we didn't speak much about copyright, but I know that the Copyright Act does provide for a copyright office. To what extent are Zimbabweans using the Copyright Office to protect their copyright?
Yeah, I think on copyright, that's where we find women, more women, even youth, to say maybe they are coming to protect their books, their dramatized work, the music. On copyright, it seems like copyright people have a better knowledge on that, other than the other three patents, trademarks, and industrial designs.
And with the Copyright Office, is there a fee for registration, or is that still at no cost?
Yeah, currently there's no fee, but we have a bill which is yet to be discussed, so that it become a law where we are going to have a voluntary registration, so it will attract a fee.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Lillian. Thank you for your insights and all you have said about the intellectual property system in Zimbabwe. So I think it just takes me then to thank my panelists, Lucy Maroa, Rosalind Charewa, and Lillian Gundu. Thank you very much, ladies, for participating in this conversation. It has been very insightful and very educative to know that our business women definitely have a can-do attitude in Zimbabwe. They are definitely being innovative and nimble to work around challenges that are there in the business environment. But as Lucy has pointed out, we just have a small gap on intellectual property, which needs to be attended to. So thank you very much, ladies.